let's move with the data analysis part, which is very quick and I can finish that. So as I said, the pulse arrives at different frequencies at different times. And if you want to have high signal to noise ratio observation of the pulsar, you need to de-disperse the data. Okay. So this process of de-dispersion is schematically shown here, where the x-axis is the pulse phase and the y-axis in the top plot is the radio frequency. So as you see the pulse is delayed progressively as a function of frequency. Now, if you want to recover the signal to noise ratio, you need to align this pulse, which means that the higher frequencies you have to shift backwards, and the amount of shift will depend on the frequency. So this shifting and aligning the pulse, this process is known as de-dispersion. And we have already talked about two ways of doing this. One way in which you just take the filter bank powers where the phase information is lost. So that is called as incoherent de-dispersion. The incoherent de-dispersion is very fast, but it has the problem that your time resolution is compromised to some extent because there is a residual dispersion smear in that. The other method which we looked at, it completely removes the dispersion smear, and it's called coherent de-dispersion, which also we saw earlier. The advantage there is that you can get very high time resolution data. So there are two ways of doing this analysis. In the earlier days, this was all done offline. That is, you recorded the voltages or powers and then did this in software offline. Okay. Today, all the pulsar instrumentation, this is done real time and online. Okay, so now we don't do this processing offline. The data which you get is already de-dispersed data. Okay. So, but if you are looking at older data, you may have to do it yourself. In addition to that, so this is for the known pulsars, because as somebody asked, we need to know the dispersion measure. Whereas if you want to find a completely new pulsar, then you have to search for this pulsar. And a typical pulsar search is a 5-parameter search, where 2 of the parameters are positional parameters, the right ascension and declination. And the other 3 parameters relate to the pulsar itself. The 5th one is the dispersion measure, which is basically the dispersion delay by the ISM, which is also a proxy of the distance to the pulsar. And then the period and period derivative of the pulsar. Okay. So, so typical, again, I'll not go into the detail. Typical analysis first tries to remove the man-made radio frequency interference as best as we can, then de-disperse the data. So, okay, so let's go parameter by parameter. So the first 2 parameters, that is RA and DEC, that you find out by dividing your sky into a large number of pointings or small chunks. Okay. So if you have 100 square degree sky and your telescope beam width is 1 square degree, you will divide this sky into 100 points and then point your telescope to each of these points for a certain time, acquire the data, then go to the next point and the next point and so on, okay, till you have completed the entire survey. Okay. The center point of each of these beams will have a RA and DEC. And if you detect a pulsar in a given pointing, you know that its approximate position is that RA and DEC. So that is the first part of the survey. The remaining 3 parameters, P, P dot and DM, they are found by analyzing the pulsar data for a given pointing, where you already now know the RA and DEC. Okay. So DM, since we don't know, as I said earlier, you will assume a large number of trial DMs. So you will start from 0 and go up to a certain DM and divide it into so many number of trial DMs. And you will process the time series for each of the DMs. Okay. And once you have de-dispersed the time series for a given DM, then you will do a harmonic analysis to determine its period and period derivative. Okay. So, so essentially, this is how the de-dispersion is done for trial DM, DM0 to DM7. And each of this time series is then Fourier transform. And then you look in the harmonic domain to find out the periodic signal, if it exists. And then you reconstruct this periodic signal. So this is the typical way the pulsar search is sort of carried out. again, details you can ask me later on. Okay. So once you have searched a new pulsar, then you look at this pulsar and then you try to derive its parameters. And the majority of the information about the pulsar comes from timing its pulse, okay, where you associate a time of arrival at the solar system barycenter to their integrated profile. So you pick up a point on the profile, okay, and this profile is obtained by averaging several thousands of periods, because individual pulses of the pulsars, they vary, they fluctuate. But when you add 1,000 or 2,000 of them, you get a very stable curve. And this stable curve is almost like a signature of that pulsar. So you associate some point here as the fiducial point, and you find out when this point arrived, and that is called as time of arrival. Once you have found out the time of arrival of a given observation, you come back after, say, 1 day and observe the pulsar again and find out the time of arrival, and you keep doing this for several days, okay? And that is what is shown in this lower plot, where you have the x-axis in modified Julian days, and y-axis is the pulse phase residual, okay? So this time of arrival, what you get from the actual observation is called as observed time of arrival. Then what you do is you know that the pulse is being emitted by virtue of the rotation of the star. So you make a rotational model of the star. You say that the rotational frequency of the star is omega, and this frequency is changing as omega dot. So this is the simplest rotational model of the pulsar. Okay. So given this, some assumed value of this rotational model, you predict a time of arrival of the pulsar. And you compare your predicted time of arrival with the observed time of arrival and find the difference between the two. The difference between the two is called as phase residual or timing residual. If your model is correct, then you will find that your phase residuals are all 0. But if your model is not correct, then you will find a systematic in your phase residual. So for example, if your frequency which you have assumed of rotation of the star is smaller than the actual frequency of rotation of the star, then you will see that your phase residual will monotonically increase, like in this particular plot. Okay. And how much it increases as a function of day will tell you what is the correction which you have to apply to get the actual frequency of rotation. This technique is known as pulsar timing, and it's a very powerful technique for extracting not only the motion of the pulsar, but also its position to a large degree of accuracy, its proper motion. If the pulsar is a binary, you can find out this, you can use this technique to find out the masses of the pulsar and so on and so forth. So this is where the most of the work as far as the pulsar data analysis is concerned is there. Okay. Again, if you are interested, I can go into the details, but not otherwise. So if your model is perfect, this is how you should see your phase residuals. If your frequency and frequency derivative are not correct, then you should see a parabolic curve like this. If your pulsar position is not correct, you should see a sinusoidal variation like this. If your pulsar is moving in the sky, has a proper motion, then you not only see a sinusoidal, you see a growing sinusoidal, and you can use, you can fit these residuals and get the values of period derivative, position, proper motion, and so on and so forth. Okay. So I think I will stop this here and then move to the next part of my talk. But before I do that, maybe I'll just give a 3 minutes break for questions and take few questions on this part. Now I will be moving on gravitational waves, where I will actually talk a little bit about pulsars. So before I do that, if anyone has questions on any of these parts, you are welcome to ask.
Sir, I had a small query. Is there any direct relationship between the period of rotation of a pulsar and the spectra of the pulses which we receive? Because we were analyzing the ORT data and we obtained something like that.
What do you mean by spectra? Spectra, you mean the Fourier transform?
Yeah, sorry, exactly. The Fourier
Yeah,
transform.
yeah. No, the word spectra has a different connotation in in astronomy. Okay, spectra is basically brightness as a function of frequency. Okay, so don't use the word spectra there.
Okay, sir.
because that will confuse people. But I understand what you are asking for. Yeah, obviously, because you are using the harmonic analysis to find the period. So there has to be a relationship there. So the answer to your question is yes, because all you are doing is you are taking a Fourier transform of your time series and then looking at the time series in the Fourier domain. So you are collecting the power in the periodicity of the pulse signal in time into one frequency bin. Inverse of that frequency is the period of the pulsar. So there is a Fourier transform relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are two kinds of spectra. One is when you take the raw time sequence and Fourier transform, you will get the radio frequency spectrum. And then when you take the intensity and study that as a function of time, we generally refer to that as a fluctuation spectrum, in which you will see the harmonics of the pulsar signal.